we've talked about NDT. There's 3 parts to your protocol. There's also iodine supplementation
Mhm.
and the high-fat carnivore diet. So let's move into the diet piece. Why would somebody want to eat that way to help heal what we're talking about?
Because that's what we evolved to eat, number one. Number two, cholesterol is anti-inflammatory. So if you have any inflammation, that's a way to reduce inflammation. And number three, that's what our steroids are made out of. So people are being sent off to test their serum levels of estrogen and progesterone and testosterone, which is ridiculous because they're attached to proteins. So what number are you going to get? And then they're put on synthetics, which is ridiculous because they're not going to attach to the receptors. So if you look at the hormone cascade, which I put in the book, the adrenal hormone cascade, you see that all of those steroid hormones come from animal fat, which is cholesterol, not from MCT oil, not from, avocado oil, only from cholesterol, animal fat. And then the synthesis of each of these hormones is dependent upon T3, because T3 decides how much estrogen that tissue needs, how much progesterone that tissue needs. And this is the same in both male and female. 90% of the steroid hormone production is made in the adrenal glands.
Well, let's get practical and talk about what this diet looks like. And I think the best way to do that is talking about what you eat. So in a typical day, when will you eat and what will you eat?
I have a high fat breakfast. If I have decaf coffee with 25 to 50 grams of fat, butter, tallow, and an egg yolk. Egg yolk because we like the froth. My husband and I, we live in Italy, like the froth. So that's my breakfast. Then I go paddleboarding if it's not too wavy. And then lunch is a steak, but I'm sure I'll have a snack mid-morning. And then another snack probably. I mean, that's because I'm very active. I see many people during the day. I do a lot of walking. I'm very active. And dinner is going to be a steak with added fat. Sorry.
Okay, a couple pieces here that fit in with the stress that I wanted to make sure we brought in. You're not fasting, you're eating in the morning, and you're snacking, which a lot of people in our world
Right.
are fasting and they're saying no snacks. So bring those in, tie them into the stress piece and why you're doing that.
I think my life is pretty stressful now. And I'm talking about snacking a little piece of jerky with maybe 10 grams of fat. I want to balance my blood sugar. I used to do a lot of sparring. I was a Kung Fu master. I'm still a Kung Fu master, but I don't, teach anymore. I don't do the sparring. So I had to stop exercising for 2 years. And now I'm very happy doing what I'm doing. But I think that to keep I'm going to be 63 in 3 months. I'm deathly afraid of Alzheimer's. So I want to keep my blood sugar very stable and balanced and make sure that I have the energy to get about my day. I mean, snacking, if you're talking about a little tiny piece of fat, it's not, it's balancing my blood sugar. If I'm out, I don't need to eat. I mean, fasting is something that humans are able to do because we won't die from starvation. So I can be out for 8 hours and not eat.
But talk about specifically why you're against fasting. Say somebody's working with you, they have a thyroid issue. You're going to tell them to eat in the morning because that's causing stress that's going to work against them.
Right, because cortisol, so if you look at the cortisol circadian rhythm, cortisol is high in the morning. That's when it peaks between 6 and 9. There's a buffer there. You have a huge reservoir. That's when you're supposed to exercise at that time. Around noon, it starts to go down. So I have a high fat breakfast because you could almost say an only fat breakfast because how much protein is in egg yolk? 2 milligrams, 2 to 4 milligrams. Because I want to have the energy and be able to back up support that high level reservoir of cortisol in the morning. If you fast, you raise your cortisol levels, your blood sugar, you'll be performing gluconeogenesis. So you won't be in ketosis because your liver is going to be putting out sugar because you're stressed, because you're fasting. So you're doing it to lose weight. It's not going to work. It may work for a time, but it won't work without drawbacks. I used to fast as a teenager to lose weight, and it worked for a while, and then it didn't work anymore because my body I was at the age of having children, and my body was like, heck no, you're not going to mess up your hormones by fasting because we need you just in case you get pregnant to be able to have a healthy child.
Let's come back to your breakfast, which is this fatty coffee, decaf. You put an egg yolk in it, animal fat. How do you go about making it?
So if coffee's hot, and I add the fat, and then I use a NutriBullet, which my youngest daughter turned me on to. Voom, voom. So it is cool by this time, mixing the fat, blending the fat with the decaf. And then I add the egg yolk and I blend it again. So had I put the egg yolk in at the same time with the fat, it would curdle. It's the heat that changes, just like, you have to cook custard on a low fire because the protein in the egg yolk changes, the shape of it changes. So that's why you avoid the heat.
Okay, so the egg yolk comes later. For animal fat, is it always either tallow or butter?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so that cools down enough. You put the egg yolk in. It doesn't make like a scrambled egg in your coffee at that point because it's cooled down. I'm intrigued by this. I haven't tried it, but I'm going to give it a whirl.
It's really good.
And to highlight another stress that you're avoiding is you're doing decaf coffee because, again, if we're having too much caffeine, that raises the cortisol again, correct?
Absolutely. So I once had a patient who had to smoke a cigarette, have a bowel movement on the toilet. Nicotine was a stimulant. Any stimulant is going to, so any substance, heroin, cocaine, marijuana, saunas, ice baths, alcohol, caffeine, all of these, sugar, all of these are stimulants, and they will raise cortisol levels.
Sugar, another important one to add.
Yeah. Stimulants.
Okay, so moving into the rest of the day, you're a big fan of ruminant animals, but no dairy.
No dairy, yeah, because...
So talk, about the dairy piece, and then I want to move into the red meat.
Okay, so yeah, I'm eating butter. The issue with dairy is casinomorphins. So, I don't have an autoimmune condition. If a person has an autoimmune condition, they should stay away from dairy because it's inflammatory. Because humans did not evolve to eat dairy, lots of dairy, because of the casinomorphins. If you could get, breast milk cheese, that would be great, but you can't. You're getting it from a cow, so it is a foreign substance to your body. Now, if you don't react, then maybe it's not an issue. You've removed every other inflammatory food, but you know that for Hashimoto's, the casinomorphins, those proteins and the gluten proteins are inflammatory. Maybe not for everybody, but for many people they are.
Any reason you stick with butter versus ghee?
I don't feel like making the ghee myself, so I don't think that if you're getting something that was made in an industrial vat with a guy with a hairnet on, I think that's a little bit far removed from natural. The butter I can just get fresh. If I make the ghee myself, which is very easy, you just have to skim the little bit of lactose and tiny bit of milk protein that rises to the top. But I kind of, I'm fine with butter.
Right. You're a fan. You're just simplifying.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about why ruminant animals for you are at the top of the pyramid and Talk about the hierarchy underneath that, how you look at different animal products.
So ruminant, as they say, they eat the grass for us, right? So there's a higher, it has more, there's nothing else that has as much iron. I would say the nutritional package is just better than anything else, and fat. So fish is great, no fat. Salmon really doesn't have any fat compared to beef or lamb. Um, Seafood is great, but it doesn't have any iron. I think that it's something that I don't think you have to only eat the ruminant. I think that if you have inflammation, you only eat the ruminant until you are better. And then you start adding things. That's what I tell people to do. Every 4 days, you add a different animal. I mean, in Australia, they eat kangaroo, which is a ruminant. I didn't know that after a while, so they eat grass. It depends on where you live, but the next stage would be, so I put ruminant, and then after that, people want to add chicken, but chickens are born bug eaters, right? They're supposed to eat insects. The chickens that we get don't eat insects. So there's a higher omega-6 content. The pork we get has a higher omega-6 content. So that's why if there's inflammation or any autoimmune condition, I don't recommend those carnivore foods initially.
Since you're such an advocate for high fat, whether it be a ruminant animal or otherwise, how do you feel about adding things like the butter and tallow on top of that to bring that fat percentage up even more?
Oh, that's what I do. That's what I need. That's what I tell people to do.
So you always do that.
You can't get to 820 for a female or 70-30 for a male without adding the tallow or the butter. You can't do it because it's going to be 60-40. There's not enough fat. I mean, in Italy, there's no fat on any animal because they kill them at 16 months. In America and other countries, they let them live, they live longer in order for them to age and have some fat on them. But people here are so afraid of fat that there's no fat. So I have to add it on.
Given the way you're eating, I assume you're always in ketosis. But how do you look at ketones as being part of this whole healing picture?
Absolutely, they are the healing picture. So that's the better fuel to burn. I don't want to get Alzheimer's. Too many family members had Alzheimer's. I got 3 children, grandson. So I don't want to put them through that. Ketosis is the best metabolic state. There's glycolysis and there's ketosis. You're burning, if you eat too much protein, you're also going to be in glycolysis because excess protein will turn into glucose. Fat will never turn into glucose. So it's an excellent way to balance blood sugar, and ketones are the best way to get energy. Your liver obviously makes some cholesterol, but not enough in our high stress world.
Okay, so you're having meat as the foundation of the diet, adding extra fat. What about salt and other spices? How do you feel about those?
I eat a ton of salt, so I have to have a teaspoon of salt in the morning when I go paddleboarding. In ketosis, you need salt, minimum of 5 grams a day, because carbohydrates make you retain water. In ketosis, that retained water goes away, so you need salt. With water, you lose salt if you don't. So a carnivore absolutely needs salt, not just salt in your food. In many cases, if you have adrenal and thyroid issues, you're going to have light cramps at night. So salt can mitigate that until you fix the other issues.
How do you feel about different kinds of salt? Is there any specific hierarchy there?
Not iodized salt and not bleached salt. Those are no good. So iodized salt is contaminated with sodium iodide, which is a really crappy, cheap form of iodide. And bleached salt is no longer an electrolyte. So where I live, you can only get pink Himalayan salt. I don't have access to Celtic or Nigerian or Redmond's, or, I don't have access to that. But I know that it's a full panel, as you'd say. It's an electrolyte. I don't have to take electrolytes because they're in my salt.
For somebody currently drinking tea, let's talk about what this is doing to the thyroid.
It's preventing the absorption of iodine. So you'll get a goiter. You will have an inflamed thyroid, as will all the other tissues, not just the thyroid. Fibrocystic breasts, uterine, ovarian fibers, inflamed prostate.
Why is that? Talk more about what's happening with tea and the fluoride.
Tea grows in fluoride-rich soil. The reason why you have that acidic taste that people love, it comes from the fluoride that is in the soil where the tea plants are grown. Now, the highest rate of congenital hypothyroidism is in the areas where they grow tea. So I did research on this in China, in India, and in Ireland, which is one of the countries where they drink the most tea, and the rocks there have a lot of fluoride anyway. So it's a huge issue.
Okay, tea aside, any other food and drinks that have fluoride in them we want to be aware of?
Not necessarily fluoride, but they prevent the synthesis of iodine, which would be oatmeal, cassava, sweet potatoes, oh, flax seeds. I have a list of them and the medications in my book, Good Fat is Good for Girls. Lots of them, many.
So it's obvious you're not into plants. We have to get those out of the diet. What about somebody right now tuning in on a vegan diet? What's that doing to the thyroid?
Well, they're not going to be able to have heme iron. So the thyroid needs zinc, magnesium, iron. It needs all the nutrients that are in meat to function properly. And they'll be in a stress state because they won't be having any animal fat. So none of the other plant fats are ever going to make steroid hormones. Yes, not good for the thyroid or anything else in the body being vegan.
What about this talk of olive oil being a health food? And then also underneath that, often avocado oil, coconut oil. Obviously, you're a fan of animal fat, but even people in the carnivore world may be using those in and out with animal fats. So, talk about why even these quote unquote healthy oils, animal fats are superior.
Well, you can't make a steroid hormone out of olive oil or coconut or avocado oil. That's my problem. So if you're getting enough animal fat and you want to eat some lettuce, which is just chlorophyll, it's not going to hurt you. There's nothing in lettuce really. And you want to pour some extra virgin olive oil on it, that's fine if you don't have an autoimmune issue and you need to fix it. So eventually you can have your salad with olive oil, but I don't think it's going to be harmful, but it's never going to make hormones. Now, the Greeks ate meat. They used the olive oil as lighter fluid. They did not eat the olive oil. So now the countries where I was living in southern Italy, there used to be, animals, and now it's all olive trees. There's absolutely nothing but olive trees and wine, grapes. So humans have changed. It's you make more money off of all. It's easier to produce a bunch of olive oil and send it to America, and they'll pay for it rather than butchering an animal and giving it to a few families in the area.
If you enjoyed that clip, you're going to want to head over here and catch the full episode. I'll see you over there.
Thyroid hormone regulates every single tissue in the body. Regulates our genes, regulates mitochondrial function, the genesis of mitochondria, so everything really. I treat hyper and hypo the same way. Same anti-inflammatory.